Welcome back to the third and final segment of our one-year Bible broadcast. We're in Psalm 22, and we'll be reading from verse 4. This is a psalm that talks about the prophecies of Christ on the cross. If you go through and you read through Psalm 22, you'll find a lot of very striking prophecies of Jesus on the cross. But today I won't be talking about those prophecies. I'll just be talking about verse 4. And let me read that to you. It says, "In you our fathers put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them." Let me read that again. "In you our fathers put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them." So it talks about the fathers. Now what does that mean when it talks about the fathers and you put their trust in them? It's talking about those who have gone before us. It's talking about our father and our mother, our grandfather, grandmothers, our predecessors, those who have gone before us in the faith. And for the Jewish people, those were the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then later on Moses, David, all the prophets. And the Jewish people, every generation, they had a faith history to build on. They didn't have to invent a brand new faith every generation because they had this rich history of faith. And in fact, the Bible is an entire historical record of their faith history. And so you can see from beginning to end that there is something that each generation had to build on. They could rely on their predecessors to faithfully hand them down the faith. They received the faith, they believed it, they lived it out, and then they passed it on to the next generation. So they didn't have to start from scratch every generation in dealing with God. Now each generation does have to come to grips with God in their own time, and they need to grapple with the questions that their time raises in respect to faith. But we don't have to invent our faith from just scratch. And that's the same way with our generation. We have the rich heritage of the Old Testament, but not only that, we have a rich heritage of the New Testament, and we have a history of the Christian church. Now the church doesn't always have a pretty history. Sometimes there's a lot of junk that we have also found in the church, and that makes sense because when we become a Christian, we are not automatically translated into perfection. So we're still grappling with the sin in the world, we're still grappling with the sin in our own lives, but we have a faith to hold on to that was passed on from generation to generation to us. And it's our responsibility to pass on that faith to the next generation, just as we received it from faithful people who preserved it. We are responsible to preserve the faith and pass it on to the next generation. And that's what we have to concern ourselves about today. We have to make sure that the faith that we pass on is actually the faith that was passed on to us. And that is a great concern for every generation, but we have to really make sure that in our generation that we don't get distracted, that we don't lose part of the faith, that we don't emphasize something that shouldn't be emphasized or neglect something that should really be more prominent. And we need to constantly ask ourselves, are we passing on the Christian faith to the next generation in a faithful manner? Are we leaving anything out? So these are things that we need to think about and not just automatically think that it'll all work out. This is our responsibility to do this. And so I'd encourage you, ask yourself, are you believing and living the faith in a faithful way? Are you reading from the Bible and testing yourself to find out if you are living the faith correctly? Are you staying faithful to God in prayer and attending a church on Sunday? These are things that will keep us in the Christian faith so that we can have something to pass on to our children when we're gone. So I hope that you've gotten something out of this one-year Bible lesson today. I encourage you to continue in your reading of the one-year Bible, and we'll see you back here next week for the next program. God bless.